Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton at Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Africa, we love the Big C tribe, but there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful September the 3rd, 2019. Grondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, I'm a little burnt out. I mean, there was so much football on this weekend that I couldn't even keep count. I lost count after 3 games. I had to turn to baseball just to slow down the pace.
Yeah, I know you won the bet, Big C, so I guess I'll be eating. What was the bet that if I lost, you had to send me a bald eagle, which is you claim you don't have any left, and I got to send you some duck, so I guess you get some deep fried duck tonight, Big C. It's all fair and love and war. A lot of good things happening in the sports universe, from basketball. It's getting on, basketball, people talking basketball, yeah, because it's starting up pretty soon, but we're still in the heart of baseball. Football is amazing. We're about to start the kickoff, Big C. I think it starts on Thursday night. I do want to say this segment sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. So, Big C, you said you had too much football or not enough food to go along with the tailgating, Big C. Which one was it?
Charlton, it was too much football. We get a wealth of football now. I remember growing up and you had 2 games on Saturday. Yep. You had a morning game. You had a late afternoon game.
Yeah.
Now the games are it's an endless cycle. There's so many games. I mean, multiple televisions going around the house, looking from here to there. Got your head on a swivel all the time. I mean, it's just a world of football going on right now, and the season just kicked off.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I just appreciate the great football that we've had. Boise State knocking off Florida State. I think even Wyoming got a bit of the win column, Big C, on some. I think they beat a team from the SEC, and I know
Missouri.
Yeah, they beat Missouri. So they might want to make Missouri go back to the Big 8 conference, Big C, and then also USC. They lost their quarterback playing a Fresno State, which it's just a shame that it happened to JT Daniels. But the game that you and I talked about. And it's okay to eat duck, or is it crow? Which, I know you eat something, but I ate a little crow. And this is why I call you the mystic. Because I was telling you, and I kind of bought into the mainstream hype about Hibbert and how great he is. And he's 6'6", 200 plus pounds, can throw the ball downfield like our laser beam. Now, Oregon was missing a couple of receivers, and they also had a drop touchdown in the end zone. But that good old boy fumbled the handoff on the 10-yard line when they could have gone up by 3 touchdowns, Big C. You said that would happen. Your thoughts?
Well, he just is not a big game quarterback. He looks great against weaker opponents, and every stellar quarterback should do that.
Yeah.
But he's had a history of this throughout his career, that when a big game is on the line, he seems to fold like a piece of paper, Charlton.
Yeah.
And here it is, an opportunity. You're playing against a true freshman quarterback.
Yeah.
And you're talked about as a Heisman potential quarterback. First round, first overall pick in the draft.
Yeah.
And when the stage gets too big, you sort of disappear. And you talk about it as a 6'6" stature. Everyone talks about the prototypical white quarterback in the NFL. Well, he's proven that he's a prototypical can't play a big game quarterback throughout his career.
Yeah, he did the same thing against Stafford last year when they had Stafford on the ropes at home in Austin Stadium. And then coming into this game, there's no way that freshman quarterback should have outperformed a team that was picked to win the Pac-12 against they had returned everyone on the offensive line. And I want to credit Auburn because Oregon had a 4th and less than a yard with about 3 minutes left to go in the game. If they get that first down, maybe they run the clock, Big C, because Auburn scored with 10 seconds left, 9 seconds left, and the Auburn defense stuffed them. I mean, they maybe even lost a yard on that play, but it still goes down. You got to credit Auburn. But a kid that was playing high school football last year beats a kid. I mean, it's not one-on-one, but Hibbert was, like you said, first-round draft pick, Heisman Trophy candidate, and a guy playing a high school football last year in his first game got him, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you, Charlton, as well as the rest of the mainstream media, said that Oregon has the best offensive line in pro football.
Yeah.
So I guess we're going to assume now that, in college football, that Auburn has the best defensive line in college football because they shut down this allegedly vaunted Oregon offensive line. They got to the quarterback. They didn't allow the running backs to exploit the field and pick up big chunks of yardage, Charlton. So there's a lot to say about the SEC and the athletes that play in that conference, that they're consistently, even if you're not on a top 5 team, Charlton, you have great athletes.
Yeah, it's just a testament to college football. I'm glad they did it right, those two programs. Someone had to win, someone had to lose. When you go down to 9 seconds before you lose a game, I still think you got to credit the winning team and the losing team. Obviously, there's always something they could have done something better. Everybody says that. But I just appreciate it all. I do want to say, I'm so excited today. There's so much happening in the universe. That's very good, Big C, the beautiful month of September. But I still want to take the time to pay homage to some of our military veterans. A lot of people go through a lot of things. We have the National Suicide Hotline. It's 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255 if you need some help. And I know Big C is so important. I keep saying technology is amazing. You can follow Big C Sports every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. on Google and Alexa, as well as you can follow us on other podcast networks out there too. And I just appreciate the growth that we're having. Just say Google, play Big C Sports Podcast, and our app pops up. Also Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast, and the app pops up. I want to get right into it, Big C. The most individual jaw-dropping performances of week 1 of college football. And I don't know if you can drop your jaw when you're chewing on those ribs on Big C. How do you drop your jaw and chew on ribs, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you drop the jaw, Charlton, and let the ribs slide in and just pull it off the bone. That's how you enjoy that.
That's funny, Big C. I want to tell you, people talk about quarterbacks, and I bought into the hype, and I hate that, Big C, because oftentimes the most dominant player on any field is still the black athlete. We can get into what happened with Jalen Hurts later. I mean, not good enough to play at Alabama, but he's good enough to set a record. But Travis Etienne, running back for Clemson, I mean, talk about the Heisman Trophy. He kicked off his Heisman Trophy campaign in grand fashion, Big C. 205 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns in the opening game of the ACC for Clemson, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, all the hype in that game, Charlton, was going to Trevor Lawrence. Everyone talked about how this quarterback was just going to blow away college football.
Yeah.
Coaches have film on him now, Charlton, so he's going to become a pedestrian quarterback. He is not going to dominate because he doesn't possess the athleticism to change the pace of the game. But Travis Etienne does, Charlton, the great running back from Clemson. I mean, he just burst out in the opening game of the season. And what was so impressive, he had a 90-yard touchdown run when Clemson was backed up back in their own end zone, Charlton. He just went the length of the field and opened up the game. But to have 205 yards on just 14 carries, Charlton, what an impressive opening game for college football.
And you know, Big C, we done a study because you go back, your history goes back way far. And like what they say, long, long ago in a galaxy far, far away. I think even Darth Vader was trying to follow the Big C Sports Show back in the day. But you talk about how good running backs are. And even today, they don't want to give running backs money. And I'm not making it a thing about color, but media does. But Hibbert was and Lawrence, they were praised as the can't-miss next great thing for football. And they both panicked under pressure. It was the African-American athletes that dominated. The number 28 for Auburn was the best running back in the game. He's the reason that Auburn beat Oregon. It wasn't because of their quarterback. He had a decent game, but he was only like less than 50% pass completion. It was the running game. Speaking of running backs, Cedric Boyd, wide receiver, he dominated the first half with 3 touchdowns and returned the second half in a new plan. Think about this. He scored his 4th touchdown in the 4th quarter, which won the game for Hawaii versus Arizona. He had 224 yards receiving, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, he's just a 5'9" receiver, Charlton, and he caused headaches for that Arizona secondary all night long. And to get the game winner, Charlton, in the last minute of the game, this was a guy that was unstoppable all night long.
Yep, he's amazing. And on the island, where you really don't get a lot of attention, talk about media not paying attention to some of the Pac-12 games. Imagine in Hawaii, when you kick off, East Coast media is usually in bed, Big C. Chuba Hibbert, running back, Oklahoma State. The guy's amazing. Reminds me a little bit of Thurman Thomas from back in the day. But think about this guy. He got to work early with a short touchdown in the first quarter, and then it was Oklahoma State's turn to hammer in the second half. He finished 2 third-quarter touchdowns and also finished with a career-high 221 yards. It was also against Oregon State. I guess in the state of Oregon, they don't want to stop the run. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I guess whether you're a duck or a beaver, you end up underwater when you're looking at going on the road playing football
they
games.
both taste good.
But when you think about Hubbard, Charlton, the performance he had with the Oklahoma State Cowboys, he's just a sophomore.
Yeah.
He showed flashes as a freshman last year in 2019. But to come out and get 221 yards in his opening game,
amazing.
He's well on his way to a 1,000-yard season.
Yeah, amazing, Big C. I just love when guys step up. And this is week 1. They haven't had a chance to see 3 or 4 weeks of film. It's week 1. David Winbert, linebacker, Utah State. Yes, Utah State, the mighty Utah State junior linebacker, delivered some of the eye-popping statistics versus Wake Forest. Think about this. 18 solo tackles. That's like 2 games worth. 2 forced fumbles. And he had a sack. Not bad for just a sophomore, Big C. Your thoughts?
And you think about Utah State, Charlton, flying under the radar out there on the West Coast. You got the University of Utah, you got BYU that everyone talks about. But when you look at Woodward's performance, Charlton, he delivered. And he's just a sophomore.
Yeah.
To go out and have 18 unassisted tackles, 2 forced fumbles, and a sack in a game, that's what you look for, leadership from your defense, and he delivered it for Utah State.
Nah, he was doing his thing. I want to bring up something else also in that game. Jamie Newman, quarterback, Wake Forest, he stood tall in the pocket. He picked Utah State's secondary apart. He completed 34 of 47 passes. Because he had 401 yards and 4 touchdowns. And you think about what he did. He came in a late drive, and he finished with a game-winning touchdown pass on 4th down. Utah State, give him credit. That team almost knocked off Michigan State last year, and they're a little bit under everybody's radar. But what a great game, and what a great performance by the quarterback for Wake Forest, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Jamie played a wonderful game. Jamie Newman, the quarterback for Wake Forest, Charlton, and you talked about Utah State and that epic battle they had back and forth against Michigan State. There was one in the last minute by Michigan State last year, and that same thing happened to them this year against Wake Forest. But you got to give credit to Wake Forest team, Charlton, to come out, one of those great academic colleges in the U.S., and they played great football and won their opening game of the season.
Well, speaking of playing great football, some teams are like factories, Big C. It's like dominoes. When one goes down, there's another one to follow. When one moves on to the next level, there's another one. Justin Fields, quarterback, Ohio State. He kicked off things when his first drive of the game. He had a 51-yard touchdown run to showcase his elite athleticism, and he would throw for 3 touchdowns also in the first quarter to get the home crowd excited in a victory over Florida Atlantic. Ohio State, just like back in the day when they used to always replace great running backs and offensive linemen, Big C, now they're doing it at the quarterback position. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Fields faced a lot of legitimate questions, Charlton, about his readiness for the season after being at Georgia, being a transfer, fairly mediocre all season. Those questions were probably answered after the performance that he had, setting a Big Ten record for opening game touchdowns by a player, Charlton.
Yeah.
In their first game in the Big Ten.
Yeah, that's amazing because everybody always talks about, and I'm not knocking anybody. I don't care what color somebody is, it doesn't matter. But I just want to be factual because media spends a lot of money pumping guys for a Heisman. If they were pumping Hibbert, they were also pumping Lawrence. I'm not knocking those guys. But this brother that played this game for Ohio State, you can't tell me that either one of those guys played better than him, but they got a lot more ink. Big C. Isaiah Pacheco, running back, Rutgers. After UMass jumped out to a 14-0 lead, Pacheco cut the deficit with an early touchdown, and then he made a second quarter his own with 3 touchdowns in 1 quarter. Think about that. 10 minutes giving Rutgers, I think it was 8:38 at the time on the clock, a 21-point lead at halftime, and he finished the game 156 yards. He had 4 rushing touchdowns, and the program needed that win desperately. Big C, your thoughts?
Rutgers found itself, on the upset early in the game against Massachusetts.
Yep.
Fortunately, Pacheco woke up and saved the further embarrassment, Charlton. This man, when you think about Rutgers' season last year, they were 1-11 on the season last year, Charlton.
Yep.
They struggled all year long. They played a lot of freshmen and sophomores, though. Those guys are matured. And you think about Pacheco having that breakout performance, Charlton, and pushing up 38 points on the board for Rutgers. They held Massachusetts is just 7 points in the second half to give Rutgers a 1-0 start on the season.
And they needed it. They expanded their stadium a couple of years ago, but they haven't had good reason. I know it was UMass, but they got to start winning over there at Rutgers. Jacob Eason, quarterback, Washington Huskies. He started the fireworks early, a 50-yard touchdown strike to give the Huskies a 2-score lead and kept things rolling. He had an excellent touch throughout the day, Big C. I really like the way he spins the ball. He finished 27 of 36, 349 yards, and 4 scores in an easy victory over Eastern Washington. It may seem easy, but those kids, they look up to Washington, and they want to knock them off, and they couldn't, but they're successful at their own level. But Easton also, he played better than Hibbert, just a state north, but less ink on the paper, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you just talked about Justin Fields, who played at Georgia also last year.
Yep.
That's where Jacob Eason transferred from last year himself. It proved to be a perfect day for the former Bulldog quarterback making their debut in programs at Ohio State and the University of Washington.
Yeah, they did. Yep.
You think about the talent that he showcased, Charlton. This kid was a starter 2 years ago at Georgia. He stepped right in at the University of Washington, and no one even knows that Jake Browning was there last year.
He's a better quarterback than Jake Browning, Big C. He doesn't fold under the pressure. Jake Browning was hyped also. I'm just being honest. Some guys are hyped so much because they want that tall white kid to be the leader of their program. And I'm not knocking on color, but I'm just saying, when you put stuff on paper, you got to just go with the guy who wins, not the guy who has the skin color you like. It's just my opinion. And they're both the same color, though. But you'll see as we talk about some other things coming up later in the program. Trey Lance, quarterback, North Dakota State. Lance set the standard for efficiency as a passer by completing 10 of 11 passes. He had a jaw-dropping 4 touchdowns and 185 passing yards. He averaged 17 yards per attempt. He also racked up 116 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. Big C, he only ran the ball 5 times. Big C, your thoughts?
you think about a quarterback running the ball just 5 times, but Charlton, you think about North Dakota State in the FCC powerhouse.
Yeah.
They have been the dominant school in the football subdivision. And if this is any indication of what this program is about, and it's going to continue being a dominance, you think about the performance of Lance. This guy is just a true freshman, Charlton. Stepping onto the big stage of college football, a dual threat performance. Fans won't forget this for any time soon.
No, they won't. And I love the fact that you could be a small program, but it doesn't mean your game is small. It's just a matter of how you get recruited. Big C, that make any sense? Your thoughts?
It doesn't, Charlton. And the landscape of college football has changed. We think about the victory of Georgia State over the weekend over the University of Tennessee down in Knoxville. They show up this small subdivision school, Charlton, and they go into Knoxville, Tennessee, and knock off the Volunteers at home 38-30. It shows that the little boys can play with the big boys now.
Yeah, that's true, Big C. And when you think of also Isaiah Hodgins, wide receiver, Oregon State, he got things going early, 29-yard touchdown. It gave the Beavers an early lead. But then you think about it. Later came through, had a nice play in the end zone for a 9-yard touchdown to keep his team in the game a little bit longer, but they just could not match up at the line of scrimmage with Oklahoma State. But Oregon State ultimately lost that game, and the coaching found a great young receiver. Even in a big loss where they were just manhandled, he had 170 yards receiving. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about Oregon State, Charlton. This is a university that's known for producing NFL wide receivers.
Yeah.
They just play in that Pac-12 conference with bigger names.
Yeah.
But when you look at what Hodges did in this game, Charlton, I think the coaching staff is going to be very happy with him as this season continues on, is that they're going to have a playmaker on their roster.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of how they get the opportunity to shine. John Wozniak, quarterback, Western Michigan. Western Michigan senior quarterback, he needs a little time to wrap up. To think about how great he played, though. He had 2 early touchdowns in the first quarter, and it kept pace. I think it was with 5 and scores in 3, and then in the fourth he had an excellent season opening performance for a quarterback that threw just 16 touchdowns. Last year he played really great for his first game out. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Western Michigan has had 2 disappointing seasons, Charlton, and they needed something to jumpstart. Wozniak, now a senior, had that. He got off on the right foot, obliterating Monmouth secondary and a blowout win. Now they're going on, and Charlton, they may have a great season and make one of those bowl games.
Yeah, and now on the defensive side, I know you get tired of hearing about offensive guys. On the defensive side, Gannon Gross Models, defensive end, Penn State. the junior pass rusher showed flashes of his ability that he had in 2018. He racked up 8 quarterback sacks. 8, Big C. That's like 4 games worth. And he turned in flashes of dominance against Idaho. I think Idaho thought they were playing a basketball game because they did not defend anyone. They didn't want to touch anyone coming at them, Big C, in the big blowout loss to Penn State. Your loss?
Well, Idaho gave up 79 points against Penn State, Charlton. I mean, at times, I don't even know if the players walked out on the field and Penn State had already
they thought
scored.
It was basketball.
But when you think about Gross Matos, Charlton, he reminds a lot of Penn State fans of Courtney Brown, former defensive end that was the #1 overall pick in the NFL by the Cleveland Browns. And, you know, if this is any start to what his season's going to be like, 2.5 sacks in just 2 quarters, Charlton, he's going to be a terror in the Big Ten this year.
Yeah, they have. I mean, if they look even half as good against Big Ten competition, you got to look at Penn State challenging for the top 3 spots. Omar Bayless, wide receiver. Arkansas State is 6'3", great receiver, scored twice inside the 10-yard line, hauled in 2 for 20 yards plus scores. Good for measuring a victory over SMU. Whatever happened to the Pony Express, by the way? It took only 1 game for him to surpass his touchdown mark. From last season, he had 2. You think about this. He should shatter his career high of 6 from 2017.
Well, you know, we look at the growth of college football and the players that are playing this great game, Charlton. This was a high-scoring affair at SMU on the weekend. You know, Arkansas State delivered one of the best lines you might see all year long.
Yeah,
Bayless made easy work of the SMU secondary. You know, with 4 touchdowns from a wide receiver in the opening game of the season, Charlton. An outstanding afternoon.
Yeah, that's the thing about college football. You don't have to be from the biggest programs to have the biggest game. Josh Johnson, running back, Louisiana Monroe. It felt like he kept ripping off huge runs every time he touched the football, Big C. He reminded me a lot of Jim Brown back in the day, and the box score affected it too. Johnson turned in 10 carries and an unthinkable 173 yards. If my math is right, that's 17.3 yards a carry, Big C. 2 touchdowns. Pretty incredible for a running back that averages more than 9 yards per carry in a game. Johnson, he nearly doubled that. That's like Jim Brown performance, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, Charlton, in a week that featured so many big rushing performances to choose from, Johnson wins out, I think. You know, when you think about running efficiency, he came into the game last season only averaging 3.6 yards a carry for his career. And here it is, he has this breakout performance where he's averaging 17 yards a carry, Charlton. He skyrocketed up the charts on Saturday.
Yeah, he really got it going. And again, I love this. I mean, how does Tennessee lose at home at Needley Stadium? We were just talking about the effect of 100,000+. Georgia State went there and did their thing on them. But then you just think about, it's all about who you are, not what school you play for, not what uniform you have on. It's about the heart of that player. Jonathan Taylor, running back, Wisconsin. It's difficult to imagine a running back with 4,306 yards rushing and 31 touchdowns in 2 seasons. Think about it, Big C. It was a 37-yard touchdown run on the opening drive and 158 yards and 2 touchdown performance. It's already outstanding. It's the second receiving touchdowns included in a spectacular catch and run touchdown that made this game very special. Taylor's a Heisman Trophy candidate. I didn't know that Wisconsin could beat up a school from Florida in the interior so easily. They dominated. It's their line play that really stood out. I know people talk about the running back, but he had a lot of holes to run through, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, you think about that hulking offensive line that they have there in Wisconsin. They've had a history of great running backs over the past 2 decades that have won Heisman Trophy. Charlton's been #1 draft picks in the NFL. But you think about Taylor, you talked about he has over 4,300 yards rushing in just 2 short college seasons.
Yeah.
And now that he's catching the ball out of the backfield, suddenly he becomes even more dangerous.
Yep.
So you think about the case with Taylor for the Heisman, Charlton. He's right up there with the top of the board with ETN on the running on the ground.
Yeah, it's amazing because when you think about some of the players that are just dominant throughout college football, and I wonder how players can transfer around and they can go where they want to go. Wisconsin's not really considered as much for dominant running backs, but I think they've had better running backs than Ohio State and Michigan, Big C. Does that make any sense? Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at the recent list of running backs that they've had, Ron Dayne won the Heisman. We think about Melvin Gordon, who's with the Chargers, Charlton. and there's been a wealth of other running backs, and we see what Taylor's doing now.
Yeah.
He's just a true sophomore. A true junior. He burst on the scene as a freshman 2 years ago and took the Big Ten by storm. He's led the conference in rushing the last 2 years.
Yeah.
But they've always been known for big offensive line, and going back to Coach Barry Alvarez, when he took Wisconsin to consecutive Rose Bowls and won out there on the West Coast, Charleston, beating up on Pac-10 teams with that physicality.
Well, let me ask you a question. When you think about Jalen Hurts, we know what happened. Started at Alabama, and then had the chance to sit there and just watch Tua come in and take his job. And a lot of people, they talked about this man transferring, and did he have character? And people said, well, you should play out your season with, sit on the bench just because you should at Alabama. But he had a lot left in him. The former Alabama quarterback unleashed 508 yards of total offense. 508. His name's not Hibbert. His name's not Lawrence. They were Caucasian guys. This is a black guy that many people said he couldn't play because he was beat up by a freshman. He wasn't beaten up by a freshman. He was replaced by a freshman. There's a difference. 508 total yards offense. He finished the game 20 of 23, 332 yards passing, 176 yards rushing on 16 carries, 6 touchdowns, 3 rushing, 3 passing. Oklahoma blew out Houston 49-31. And they're saying this guy can't play. They're saying this guy's not good enough to play at Alabama. They're saying this guy maybe should play defensive back or wide receiver. Big C, he has the #1 performance in the universe. Your thoughts?
Well, when I saw Jalen Hurts play, Charlton, it took me back to Ohio State and Braxton Miller. I thought I was seeing Braxton Miller in an Oklahoma uniform. Jalen Hurts has matured a lot since leaving Alabama, stepping into a new offense at Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley, Charlton. He's taken full grasp of this team, and he's only going to get better. You think about him really playing his first game in 2 years as a starter.
Yeah.
He stepped into a role with new players, new system, and he executed. The 6 touchdowns that he put on the board, Charlton, this was the best performance ever by a first-time starter at the University of Oklahoma. You think about the great history of quarterbacks they've had, Heisman Trophy winners, in Sam Bradford, Josh Heupel, Jason White, quarterbacks that have won Heisman there, Charlton, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
He's exceeded all of those guys, Charlton, in their opening performance as a quarterback. Oklahoma had an opportunity, Charlton, in the last 2 years to play in the BCS championship game. They just had no defense.
Yeah.
I think they have a much better defense with Jalen Hurts playing quarterback because he will control the clock more. That offense slows down just a little bit to give that defense a little more rest. He's going to be a game changer out there in Norman.
And I want to get your thoughts because of all the media pundits. And I got to eat duck too. Duck is not bad food. It tastes pretty good, Big C. But I got to eat some duck also because I fell into that Hibbert out of Oregon and even Lawrence out of Clemson. I thought if people got to read on him, they would find a way to follow up. But think about her. This guy was marooned. Like there was a TV show called Star Trek, and it was Khan. They sent him out on some maroon island up in Starfleet, Big C. So this guy was marooned. He was jettisoned off to hey, get out of our face. You go get your education, but you're not good enough. Go play defensive back. That's what mainstream media said. But we forget he was good enough to win the SEC Offensive Player of the Year as a true freshman, 26-2 as a starter, and led Alabama to the college football playoffs and national championship game in consecutive seasons. And now we have Hibbert and Lawrence being talked about on mainstream programs as the guy that you can't miss. But this young African-American man that grew up in the South, and I'm just telling you, he had to overcome that non-belief that so many people of color have had to come to. To me, that's just as impressive in the way he handled himself as what he did in the floor. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, what I love about college football, Charlton, is that players get a chance to prove themselves on game day.
Yeah.
The media gets a chance to hype somebody all week long in all the pregame shows. But it's the players who go out and have the ultimate say-so in how their career is spinning.
Yeah.
And we talked about 15 of those performances, Charlton, that the mainstream media is not generally going to talk about.
No.
Some of those players we mentioned, they will never have their name mentioned on broadcast television, Charlton. And they had the greatest performances this last week in college football.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with Jalen Hurts. People will say, well, it's just a one-game fluke. The guy has done it consistently. You think about him as a starter. He is 27-2 as a starter in college football. Actually, the best record amongst starters in college football, the most victories amongst quarterbacks and with the fewest losses. So he's done it regardless of the personnel, Charlton. And that's what I love about this great college game.
Yeah.
Is that the media is sitting up just like us. Everybody has an opportunity to form an opinion.
Yep.
A lot of those guys go with the preponderance. People tell them, no, this is the guy we want to hype.
Yeah.
And just because you want to hype a guy does not mean that he's going to perform. We look at those great performances by the running backs over the weekend.
Yeah.
There were guys that no one even knew about, but when you're sitting out there and you're averaging 17 yards a carry, you even think about Jalen Hurts. He averaged 10 yards a carry at quarterback.
Yeah.
So when you talk about an overall dual performance threat, Justin Fields at Ohio State, accounting for 6 touchdowns up there himself, Charlton. The quarterbacks that they don't want you to think about are the ones that are performing. And realistically, Charlton, it's a favor when the media doesn't talk about these guys.
Yeah.
Because they fly under the radar like a duck.
Yep.
You know, and don't have to have the pressure on them.
Yeah.
They're not sitting there being hyped up that you have to perform, that you're the Heisman candidate. You're the guy that everybody in the NFL is tanking over.
Yeah.
And you can't win in college? Let's be realistic.
Yeah, I just, and you know, I just love it, Big C. It reminds me of what it's like to be a young boy, and when you have this belief that you can do anything that you want to do, you can do it. But you're going to have to fight for it. No one's going to give you anything. In fact, most people compete to try to stop you when you're climbing that ladder. And to see young African-American quarterbacks do that in the face of primarily media that's not controlled by people that look like them, and I'm just being real, Big C, because of these quarterbacks that are African-American, where if they had white skin, they'd be saying that we've never seen anything like this. And they tried to do that for Hibbert, and they tried to do it for Lawrence. But you get 500 yards in one game, I mean, that's amazing. I'm going to take what's called the Big C timeout. I'm very passionate, Big C. I've been eating so many collard greens, and that stuff runs through you. If you haven't tried it, try it deep fried. Sometime it tastes just as good. I'm going to take the Big C timeout. We'll come right back in just a second, and we hope that you'll come back with us. All right, we are back from what's called the Big C timeout on the Big C Sports Show, and I'm really loving what's happening with Big C Sports and all the things that we're talking about on this beautiful September. We know football is starting, and there's just a lot of things that people can do if they put their heart, mind, body, and soul into it, Big C. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe on iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast Television. And you can find us, I mean, for the most part, just tell a friend about Big C Sports Podcast. I'm not saying we're any better than anybody else, but I love what we do. We do it extemporaneously. No, we don't have the best microphone. We're not sitting up in $1 million studios. Big C's roasting duck. I know he's roasting duck on his boat while he's doing the Big C Sports Show. I just love what we're doing, Big C. And so of all the college football games that we saw, I'd be remiss if I did not ask you about the Boise State being probably the most impressive team from the West Coast over the weekend. Not only did they fly 3,000 miles from home, they had to get diverted because of the hurricane coming in from Florida. And so they moved the game from Jacksonville, and they moved it to Tallahassee. So they really had to find a way to get around. Florida kind of knew how to get there. Even their fans had to find a different way to get there. Not only that, Big C, they fell behind, and they could have been blown out. But it takes a lot of moxie for a team to have so many challenges and to still find a way to win that game on the road at Florida State. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, one of the things we've looked at at Boise State, Charlton, is their history on the road against the big boys.
Yeah.
They seem to get excited about playing a big-time university from the Power 5 conferences. And they've gone on the road throughout their history for the past 8 to 10 years and beat those guys. Charlton, you think about they gone down to Georgia, I think it was 2011. Opening game of the season, and beat the University of Georgia down in the Georgia Dome.
35-7.
So there's been no stage too big. We saw what happened in the Fiesta Bowl versus Oklahoma. They go down to Tallahassee in Florida State's home field, Charlton. Florida State got up on Boise State early. But they didn't panic. And you think about Boise State, as we talked about several of the other programs, they have a first-time starter at quarterback, Charlton, who did not fold under pressure. who sit there with his head coach. They work things out, Charlton,
Yep.
and they're able to come back against Florida State. And here it is, the Florida State coach is making excuses for his players, saying that they're dehydrated playing at home.
Yeah.
You know it's humid in Florida. You got to drink. So to use that excuse that his players were tired and dehydrated, what have they been doing for the last 3 or 4 weeks at training camp?
And I think Taggart was really looking out for his kids, but there's no excuse when you're at home. I know, and I'm going to be honest about it too, because people are not robots, Big C. A lot of players that lived in Florida and they had the hurricane coming in, they've seen what happened every year with hurricanes. So maybe they had some of that on their mind with their families. It's not, when you're in the eye of the storm, you're going to have more things that are more important than playing a football game. And so I'll let Taggart off the hook for that, because while we're all watching the game, people in the South, they're trying to keep their, make sure they stay alive, Big C. Does that make any sense, your thoughts?
It does, Charlton. I mean, we've seen that at the University of Miami playing a game, Charlton, when the hurricane was hitting down there, and now you got it down in Tallahassee. A lot of these players are from the coastal regions of the state.
Yep.
So that emotion does play a lot in these young players' mind. They're thinking about their mothers, their dads, their brothers, their sisters, grandmothers, aunts and uncles, Charlton.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we do look at players being immune to everything that's going on outside them, Charlton.
Yeah.
We don't always think about them as people, but they are. They're just as sensitive as anybody else. And with the devastation that has gone on down in South Florida with Hurricane Domain coming in, Charlton, this is one of those things that will bother those young men, Charlton. And so you have to give them credit for being able to go out and even perform at that level on Saturday.
Yeah, I think Hurricane Dorian, and everybody talks about the fires that hit Northern California, whether it's Northern California, Southern California. The last thing people were concerned about is a game. And for some of the media out here in the Bay Area to say, fire the coach Taggart, he's making excuses for his kids because they may be concerned about their families and relatives being caught up in a hurricane. No, fire some of the knuckleheads that don't have sensitivity. Because when places are burning down in California, people were asking people to send money. Send money to who? To the Red Cross or to the local agencies? But when it turned to the hurricane down south, the first thing these knuckleheads say is fire the guy. He's saying he's making excuses for his team. No, there's a hurricane. That's the excuse. Big C, I want to get on some Major League Baseball. Man, I'm very passionate. I love what we're doing. I'm telling you, those collard greens, if you haven't tried them, just try them. They make you get a lot of energy out of them. I want to run down Major League Baseball schedule for tonight. And then I want to get into some games that have happened, over the weekend. And I know, football is just, it makes you feel like you can run through walls too. No one's making excuses for Chip Kelly taking UCLA up to Cincinnati and getting hammered and saying fire him. But they want to fire Taggart for having a team dealing with a hurricane and a life-threatening situation. That's crazy. Tonight's schedule, the Rangers at the Yankees and the Mets at the Nationals. We have the Orioles at the Rays. We have the Twins playing at the Tigers tonight. The Blue Jays at Atlanta. And then Philadelphia at the Reds. Big C, the Giants are playing at the Cardinals. And as much as I'd love to see Bruce Bochy, go out with maybe a playoff run, not the World Series, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. But it's a rate. I mean, this is just my own thought. When Madison Bumgarner, the talk was trading him, they were on a tear. He signed that big contract, and I'm not just knocking Madison. It's like the team relaxed. And now that they relaxed, they're not winning as much. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, they were in a race. You got to think about baseball teams, even football teams, anybody, basketball. When you're so far behind, how much energy you have to expend.
Yeah.
Emotions play a lot. We just talked about college football and the young men down at Florida State, how a lot of them were troubled about their families not knowing whether they were safe or not, or whether they were going to lose everything they had.
Yeah.
Here were the Giants, yes. Prior to the trade deadline, Charlton, with Madison Bumgarner, there was a lot of talk about, do you get rid of him as an organization, and do you try to start rebuilding now? Madison Bumgarner is only 29 years old, so, I mean, there was never a reason to get rid of him. The Giants were on a hot streak. He's not the one swinging the bat. He was the one throwing the pitches. It's the rest of the lineup, Charlton, that has to keep pace.
I agree. There's something about when people have, it's called fight or flight. When you think you really got to fight, you'll fight or you'll run away. And sometimes when people realize that they're going to be around, they stop that energy that you got to have. Everything takes energy. Being out here in California, the Pacific Ocean is energy. That hurricane down south, the more energy it builds up, the more it can do. So we got to have that energy in our lives. Also, you have the Mariners at the Cubs. I really like Chicago. The Astros at the Brewers. And you have that three-headed pitching down there, Big C. I really think that the Astros will find themselves somewhere. And they're going to be in the playoffs. I don't know World Series, but they look like they could. The Padres at the Diamondbacks. The White Sox at the Indians. You have the Rockies at the Dodgers. And I'll just give out yesterday's score because the Dodgers, they were looking bad when New York Yankees came in and beat them up, Big C. I mean, that gold chain that I bought from New York, and it turned out to be some fake gold because my neck was all green. And so don't buy anything that you don't get a receipt from, number one. But the Dodgers, to beat the Rockies 16-9 in their game yesterday, Labor Day, this team only scored 4 runs in 3 games at home versus the Yankees. So was the 16-9 wins fool's gold, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, no, Charlton, it wasn't. I mean, you get odds struck by the Yankees coming into town, and it just happened to be the Yankees' weekend. But you think about how the Dodgers rebounded yesterday in a resounding way, scoring 16 runs, Charlton. Will the Rams score 16 points in their opening game?
Yeah, we don't know if that'll happen. So that's Labor Day today. Orioles at the Rays, Rangers at the Yankees, Philadelphia at the Reds. The Orioles will play against the Rays, the Mets and Nationals, the Marlins and Pirates, the White Sox at Cleveland again, the Twins, the Red Sox, Blue Jays at the Braves, the Astros are at the Brewers, and the Giants at the Cardinals. Looking forward to Bruce Bochy just having a nice swan song. The Mariners at the Cubs, the Tigers at the Royals, the Padres at the Diamondbacks. You have the Angels and the Athletics. I'm telling you, the A's beat up on the Yankees. They swept them out of here in Oakland. And then with the New York and the Yankees, they found their moxie again, Big C, against the Oakland A's. Your thoughts?
Well, the Angels, Charlton, that they're going to be in the playoffs. They swinging some big bats. They're getting some players back that have been unhealthy all year long, Charlton. People don't realize how many players that the Yankees have put on the DL list this year. And they still dominated the Eastern Division and have the best record in baseball.
Yeah, and so we know the Yankees are going to be there, especially when you have Chapman. I would say Chapman's the best closer. I know they talk about Verlander as a starting pitcher, but I feel more comfortable with Chapman coming in and closing out a game for the Yankees. It just depends on who gets there in that final. If they're going to meet in the ALCS, I'd love to see that, Big C. So today, the Texas Rangers, they handed the New York Yankees their first shutout since June of 2018. Mike Minor and 2 relievers became the first pitchers in 220 tries, Big C, to shut out the Yankees 7-0, Big C. Your thoughts?
We talked about the long ball that the Yankees hit, Charlton, and the tear that they were on out on the West Coast, dominating the A's and the Dodgers.
Yeah.
But they came back home. They may have lost their sea legs out there, Charlton, but to be shut out. And you think about it, over a 2-year span since the Yankees have been shut out, Charlton, but to be shut out like that by 3 pitchers, what a great dominant performance.
Yeah, and there's I still think as far as, and again, I'm a little bit partial. I've seen almost all the ballparks in major leagues. I still like what's now Oracle Ballpark in San Francisco, even though I will still want to call it Pack Ballpark. That's how it opened. But there's something about watching the game at Yankee Stadium also in New York City where you just gotta love that environment, especially when it's 56,000 strong. But the LA Dodgers, we talked about them in their Yankees match, because I still hope that the universe will align it to see them again in the World Series. But they slugged 7 home runs, Big C, this Dodgers, that only got, I believe, 4 runs total in 3 games versus the Yankees at home. 7 home runs in a 16-9 victory over Colorado. It was Jock Peterson who hurt it twice and drove in 5 runs. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you're up there in Colorado, that ball will carry.
Yeah.
And you get the bats. And we've talked about the home runs that have been hit in Major League Baseball this year. It's an epic pace, Charlton. We're going to have over, a record number of players hit 40 home runs this season.
Yep.
Which is great for fanfare. I mean, you think about all the little kids that come to the ballpark and they think about seeing the ball fly out, even the people that have been longtime fans.
Yeah.
It's just been great. And to look at baseball playing at the record pace that it is right now with football starting, it gives you a reason to continue going to the park.
Yeah, it's amazing right now. Cleveland Indians, Carlos Santana homered, and Franmil Reyes had 3 runs, a 3-run double as the Indians defeated the Chicago White Sox 11-3 in their game. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Indians, Charlton, are trying to get back to the playoffs as a wild card team. They're trailing Minnesota in the Central Division.
Yeah.
But we've seen what they can do when they get to this part of the season, and they've been hot as of late.
Well, you think about being hot. Houston Astros pitcher. You think about not the pitcher, but George Springer. He homered in the 10th inning, was followed a game-tying homer by Christian Yelich of the Milwaukee Brewers, and they gave the Astros a 3-2 victory. People talk about the Astros pitching, but they're hitting. When you win 3-2, that's a luxury because this is a team that can take 7 runs against any team. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the clutch hitting is what's key in baseball, and you think about that with Springer hitting the ball, hitting that home run after Christian Yelich had tied the game, Charlton, late, and coming out in the 10th. I mean, over the weekend, Justin Verlander also pitched his 3rd career shutout, well, no-hitter against the Toronto Blue Jays over the weekend to propel his career. So you think about the Houston Astros getting hot at the right time. They've led the division most of the year, but right now, Charlton, they're getting even better.
Yeah, Verlander, I mean, this Hall of Fame first ballot, no questions asked. Kyle Schwarber had a 3-run triple to highlight a 5-run 7th inning to give the Chicago Cubs a 5-1 victory over the Seattle Mariners. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, how far ago, Charlton, was the start of baseball season when the Seattle Mariners started off the season 12-1?
Yeah.
And they swept the World Series champs at that time, Charlton, the Boston Red Sox.
Yep.
And now they're dwelling at the bottom of the division out there in the American League West. And this weekend didn't do them any good at all, Charlton. Kyle Schwarber, as you said, from the Cubs, getting hot at the right time.
Yeah, you think about Josh Donaldson, Johan Camargo hit 2-run homers, or 2-run homers, and as Mike Soroka snapped a streak of 8 starts without a win as the Atlanta Braves beat the Toronto Blue Jays 6-3. I know Atlanta can be, a little streaky at times, but this is a team, they're young. You know how when you're young, you think you're invincible? They're so young. I know we talk about the Dodgers and their experience. We talk about the Astros with their experience. But something about young men, a little bit more fearless. And the Braves have a dominant team this year, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at the Braves, Charlton, they won the National League East last year and look like they're going to be a surefire bet to win it again back-to-back years. This is a team, as you said, with a lot of young players. Yep. So I don't think that loss that they had in the playoffs last year to the Dodgers will affect them emotionally, Charlton. They'll feel that they come out and have something to prove, and they're staying hot as the season moves on.
Yeah, yes, you have Josh Rojas, Eduardo Escobar, and Christian Walker. They homer in the 6th inning off of converted infielder Javi Guerrero as the Arizona Diamondbacks beat the San Diego Padres 14-7, and I guess they thought they were playing football. Big C, 14-7.
Well, Charlton, when you think about that, will the Arizona Cardinals be able to score at least 14 points this weekend in the opening week of the NFL season? But the Diamondbacks, they've been a mystery in the NL West out there all year, Charlton. They have the personnel to challenge the Dodgers, and they've always seemed to fall just a little bit short.
Yeah, it's a great time of year of baseball. Beautiful September. It's amazing. Adam Wainwright tossed a 7 scoreless innings, and Colton Wong delivered a run, scoring triple to lead the St. Louis Cardinals to a 3-1 victory over the San Francisco Giants. And I just love San Francisco. I went to a restaurant called the Stinking Rose. If you ever come out to San Francisco, I'll take you there, Big C. They serve so much garlic. It's like garlic's supposed to be a side dish. They give you so much garlic with the lamb. It's like garlic is the entree. Amazing. But the Giants stuck it up also like a Stinking Rose against the Cardinals. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about Wainwright, Charlton, dominating the Giants. The Cardinals are in a heated battle with the Cubs for the Central Division in the NL, and they just have a couple-game lead. But as long as you're getting solid pitching, Charlton, it helps you out down the stretch.
Yeah, it's just amazing this time of year. It's nice to appreciate things coming around the stretch because some teams won't make it into the hunt for October, but it's just good to see great baseball happening right now at Big C. I want to bring up Alan Bowman of Texas Tech. He went 40 of 53 for 436 yards and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, as we talk about some of the best performances by college quarterbacks over the weekend. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Alex Bowman, Charlton, wasn't on that list talked about by all your media brethren out there. Alex Bowman is just he's a sophomore at Texas Tech. You think about the long lineage of quarterbacks, Graham Harrell, Cliff Kingsbury, Baker Mayfield that have played there, Patrick Mahomes. Alex Bowman is the latest in that line, Charlton. Do you think about the performance he had, hanging up 436 yards on the opening week of the college football season?
Yeah.
Big 12, look out.
Yeah, Big 12, look out. Also, I think about Kelly Bryant, Missouri. He went 31 of 48, 423 yards and 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. What a game, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you think about a Big 12 quarterback, Charlton. That guy is in the SEC. He transferred from Clemson last year after he was replaced by Kelly Lawrence. They lost to Wyoming in that opening game, but when you think about the yardage, he put up 423 yards and 2 touchdowns, Charlton. He did all he could to help Missouri try to win that game.
Yeah, and you think about Missouri losing that game. It's easy to say it's a stain on something. Boise State goes down and they knocked off Florida State in their own backyard. Is Missouri losing that game, does it put a stain on the conference? I know they're expanding their stadium up there to get some of that SEC money, but does it put a stain on them when they lose to a program that they're supposed to jump all over? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about 2 top-flight teams in the ACC that lost, Florida State and the University of Miami. You think about the SEC, where you have the University of Tennessee and the University of Missouri. Both of those teams lost home games, Charlton.
Yeah.
So when you think about Power 5 conferences, are they all what they are supposed to be? You think about even out there in the Pac-12 where you had UCLA go on the road and lose, Charlton.
Yeah.
You've had other teams in these Power 5 conferences that did not live up to the hype. Oregon went on the road and lost.
Yeah.
So when you think about 3 of the Power 5 conferences, Charlton, that have 2 of the top teams in their conference lose over the weekend, I don't know if it's a stain. I just look at it as equality in college football.
Yeah.
The big boys are big boys because of the money.
Yeah.
Athletes are athletes because they have the heart and desire to play.
Yeah.
And that's where the game is, on the field, not in the broadcast booth, not in the pregame shows telling you who's better than who. As you're talking about these quarterback numbers, Charlton, those top-listed quarterbacks that came out that everybody said were on the Heisman watch, whether it was Tua, whether it was Hibbert, whether it was Lawrence, they're not in the top 5 passers this past week in college football.
Yeah. Well, I'm telling you what, I saw just watching a lot of games over the weekend. To see Nevada knock off Purdue, at least I got that one right, because I was saying before I think it was on the last podcast we did, before holiday weekend, Labor Day, I said when people go into Nevada, the Wolfpack have been known to knock off some teams from bigger conferences, and Purdue going into halftime, you thought maybe this has had too much going for them. But Nevada also started a freshman quarterback. That kid came on, and he threw the ball like Kaepernick. Doesn't run like Kaepernick, but he threw the ball very well. I thought Nevada's speed was too much for Purdue, and it showed in the second half. I think they kicked a 56-yard field goal as time ran off to win that game over Purdue. But when you look at Purdue, Elijah Sindelar, the quarterback for Purdue, he was 34 of 52, 423 yards. And think about this. He had 4 touchdowns, but he had 2 interceptions. And I keep saying, in the West Coast, it's as if the Mountain West with Boise State, Fresno State, and then Wyoming knocking off teams from bigger conferences, they carried the torch for the West Coast football. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about Sandler, Charlton, and Purdue. I mean, they lost that game on a last-second kick by a walk-on kicker out of the University of Nevada. And what's great about that kicker, Charlton, is that they awarded him a scholarship in the locker room after that game-winning field goal.
That was nice.
But you think about Purdue having to go all the way out to the West Coast, and Sandler also airing it out for 423 yards. All of these quarterbacks that you're talking about, Charlton, were under the radar by the national media, saying that they weren't worthy of getting recognition. And that's what we do, is we give a lot of the little boys recognition that everybody else doesn't. We want people to go out and Google what we're talking about. Listen to, find out about these players. Get their backgrounds. We talked about the amazing 15 performances of week 1 of college football. That they're not going to talk about on the highlight shows. I guarantee you at least 10 of those players we mentioned will not be talked about on the highlight shows, Charlton, because they're not at all those major universities.
And all we say is Google it. Anthony Gordon, Washington State, he went 29 to 35, 420 yards and 5 touchdowns, and no interceptions, Big C, for Washington State. Your thoughts?
You got to think about how intelligent Mike Leach is as a head coach out there at university. We talked about Jacob Eason up there at the University of Washington, Charlton, the performance he had in his first game, taking over there for the Huskies out there. And here it is, you go up to Pullman, and you think about Anthony Gordon, Charlton. This kid sat for 3 years on the bench in Washington State. Watch other quarterbacks like Drew Lock, Gunnar Minshew have great success in that air raid offense at Washington State. He bought his time. He sit back, Charlton. He's been like a coach on the sideline, learning behind those great quarterbacks. And in his first time as a starter at Washington State, to go out and hang the ball up 35 times, Charlton, with 29 completions, and to get 420 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Amazing.
We've talked about some exciting young men in this year already in college football with these epic performances that they've had in their first game. Much more is still to come throughout the season.
Well, let me give you one more. Jordan Love, Utah State, went 33 of 40, 416 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did throw 3 picks, but 3 touchdowns, pretty impressive against bigger competition. Your thoughts?
Well, the 3 interceptions, I mean, the stage is not too big for him. We remember what he did last year against Michigan State. He came out and did the same performance again against Wake Forest. If not for the 3 interceptions, we heard about his teammate, the linebacker, Charlton, that had the 18 tackles and 2 sacks and fumble recoveries, Charlton.
Yep.
Utah State has a team under the radar out there in the Mountain West. They can play football. In the right conditions, Charlton, nobody really wants to play against them. And Love proved that he's a quarterback that can play at the next level.
Yeah, definitely so. We're also going to bring you some action and talk about schools from the MEAC as we go for Big C's Friday Night Lights and college football preview. We'll have North Carolina Central, North Carolina A&T, South Carolina State, Hampton, and Florida A&M. I look forward to bringing you some black college football from the HBC as we'll cover that going into next week as we start first week of the college football. But Big C, I also want to make sure that Big C Sports, we're not just going to talk about the lack of coverage that other people don't give the HBCs, historically black colleges. We're going to also talk about some of those programs ourselves. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's always great to go out there and talk about the HBCs and the great talent that they've always had over the decades. They don't get the mainstream notoriety that they deserve. A lot of these young men, Charlton, are going to be having careers in the NFL as well as in professional life after their collegiate days are over. But I think it's a sad thing that we don't get a chance to see enough of this on television. Some of the best collegiate athletes out there. Their programs are just not funded because they don't have the big network contracts. You don't see an HBC network, which it should be. If all these other conferences can get that, why can't the HBCs get that, Charlton, and be on television on a regular basis? And
we'll also bring your teams from the SWAC, Alcorn State, Alabama A&M, Jackson State, and Mississippi Valley State. I think a guy by the name of Jerry Rice played at Mississippi Valley State. You can follow Big C Sports every Monday through Friday on the #1 podcast network in the universe on iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast Television. If you have the app called Alexa, say, Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear Welcome to the Show. I'll introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate our sponsors for all their support. And one more thing I want to bring up, because everybody has school started pretty much everywhere in the country. There's a lot of kids going on to the next level to get the best education they can find. And we want them to know that everything you want, you just got to go get it. We talk about football, basketball, baseball, soccer, MMA, all these great competitions, Big C. If you want to do something in the classroom, it's the same thing. You got to go earn it. And as you earn it, more people will talk about what you did. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, education has always been the forefront of everything. I mean, it's one of the advocates that I've always been for. I've always talked about it, about getting an education. It's not about how big, fast, and strong you are. I mean, so much emphasis is put on that, but no one is really talking about the education that these young men and women need to receive. I mean, the young ladies in college tend to get a better education than most of the men because they're not always aspiring to be professionals. But I think it's one of the things that the universities as well as the networks, when they're talking about that, let's talk about the GPA. Let's talk about what kids are studying. What are the future plans for them? This is what we need to talk about, because only a handful are going to make it in professional athletics.
That's very true. So we'll make sure we do that on Big C Sports. And tell a friend, just say Google Big C Sports Podcast, and you hear somebody different. You hear something different every single show that we do. Big C on this date, September 3rd, in 1974, the Big O, Oscar Robertson, he retires. He finished his career. He averaged 25.7 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, 9.5 assists, both for the Cincinnati Royals. Milwaukee Bucks, they retired his number, known as the Big O. I'm sure the Big O would love to be on the Big C Sports Show. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he's an icon in Cincinnati, Charlton. He went to the University of Cincinnati. He was drafted by the Cincinnati Royals in the NBA. Charlton played an illustrious career. He was the first player to average triple-doubles in the NBA. He finally was able to win an NBA title when he was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks, and he teamed up with Lou Alcindor, Charlton, to bring that city his one and only NBA title.
Yeah.
But the Big O will always be cherished as one of the top 50 players of all time in the NBA. He revolutionized the guard position, Charlton.
Yeah, and just amazing. We love bringing you football. We love bringing you basketball, baseball, boxing, mixed martial arts. We even throw some politics every now and then. I know NFL football is starting up. Big C's going to have his thoughts. And we don't pick teams, but we just give you Big C's choices on what teams have to do to win. And I really look forward to doing that with Big C coming up later this week. I want to say every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, as we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you, on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.